right? Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our August 2022 Resonance Science Foundation Faculty Q&A with myself and William Brown and Ines, who just beamed in right at the moment we were anticipating she would. So welcome everybody from wherever you are. Go ahead. Some people are putting a hello into the chat. If you would do that, that would be great. I got to get mine open so I can see who's here. Yeah, great. From Toulouse, France, Virginia, Seattle, and oh, there's a lot of people here. So go ahead and say hello in the chat, and make sure you set your chat to be set for everyone rather than for the panelists and hosts. So I see somebody has sent it to just the hosts and panelists. So change your chat so everybody can see it. And we're grateful you're here as always. Thank you guys for coming and joining us. We love doing these Q&As with you. And if you're new to this, we host these once a month, and on the third Wednesdays of every month is the faculty Q&A, currently with William and Ines and myself. And then usually in the first Wednesday of the month is with Nassim. And this month he was traveling and so could not do it this time. But as far as I know, early September, we should get back to that, which would be great. And as is always the case, Jeff Colbrook has put the first question into the chat. Jeff, I think, has these questions ready about 30 days in advance. And he is all typed out and ready to go. So you might take his cue and think of a question ahead of time and get it ready and put it in the Q&A. Open up the Q&A button and put it in the Q&A. And then you can vote questions up that you think you're popular, make them more popular, and we can get to those. And we also will just bounce around and choose questions anyway. Usually there are too many questions to get to in our session, and we'll go till for about an hour and a half. So it's great to be here with everybody. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina, enjoying a beautiful summer here, and just kind of cruising along. I don't think I have any big updates on any kind of scientifically interesting front at the moment. So how about you, Ines? What's cooking for you? Are you down in Mexico City?
Yeah. Yes, here, well, rainy season. So every afternoon, you'll start probably here in the.
Yeah, same here, actually, in Asheville, every afternoon. Thunderstorms. Yeah, same kind of
okay,
weather.
but that's regular over there, this period of the year? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So same here. So yeah, well, I have some good news. Just 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3, we did the launch of the book in Spanish. Talks about this consciousness experiments that I have been involved with, and the prologue is from Nassim Haramein. So we're very excited. It went really well, considering also that it was a presentation of a book. So usually not so much people come, but there were more than 100 people there. And as well, it was raining as hell. So I said, no one will make it here. This is so crazy, but it was great. So yeah, so that's so now we are starting to do the translation in English. So, and there's a chapter that I wrote in that book. So there's a chapter from me, and there's another physicist also that wrote a chapter. He's a plasma physicist, Arturo Ortiz. And so, well, yeah, so that was part of the project that so at some point we'll start like trying to see how the holographic model fits into these experiments that we were performing. And of course we have to do so much more. This is just like the pre-stage. We're just starting with this kind of experimentation. And I'm very happy to know that Greenberg, let's say like he was the pioneer in this kind of studies, is starting to have a lot of like a momentum at this moment. So no one knew him some years ago, and now like he's starting to go get into the mainstream and
Mm.
see how much of the work he had published. And where I'm talking about someone who published in the 80s, 90s. He even had an article about and I wrote a recent RSF article about him. So it's Jacobo Ginsberg, and you'll see the articles that he did at that time, and the 50 books or more. It's a beautiful theory called Sintergia, teoría sintérgica. That would be in Spanish, so I don't know how to say that in English. Synergic theory, probably. Synergic theory. And it's amazing, all the things that it describes, mostly phenomenologically, of course. There's no physical model behind it. I mean, there's some ideas and all of that, but the physics, it's supposed to be us who will bring that forward. So I'm very excited with William and Nassim. We're all getting like to know this, to delve, deeply.
Yeah.
And,
Merge the two together.
Yeah. It's amazing the amount of people that know Greenberg and then know Nassim's work and tell me, aren't they working together? I mean, the theories. And I said, no, not yet, but yeah, we're going there.
Really? Oh, that's cool.
So that's beautiful. Yeah.
Well, that's so exciting. Congratulations on that publication.
Yeah.
And we look forward to the English version for those of us who don't speak Spanish.
600 pages, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you had that event in where? In Mexico somewhere?
In Mexico City, yeah.
Yeah, it was? Okay, great. Cool.
In Mexico City, yeah. We'll start doing some little events here and there every once in a while to do some more promotion of the book. But yeah, but basically the idea of the book is just to put forward this connection between the holographic theory and the synergic theory and all the experiments that we're doing on that direction. So that's mainly the message, of course. Yeah.
I was going to say, when you're done, would you put links into some of what you mentioned, even if it's some Spanish resources?
I put it here.
Yeah, put some in the chat, like to Greenberg and anything that people might want to follow up with that you mentioned.
Okay. Okay, I'll put it. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And everyone here. Okay.
So somebody's asking, how many people are here today? And we have right now 73 of us.
Yay.
Yes. Great. Well, thanks, Ines. Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
And Mr. Brown, what's happening in your realms there at Torstech?
Keeping up with a lot of really interesting research that has been coming out recently. It's perhaps one of the more interesting updates I can give on some of the work we've been looking at. I recently just published an article on some experimentation that was done to build a functional Casimir device. Now, this is fairly interesting physics because if you're not familiar, the Casimir effect is an observation, direct observation that can be done that shows the substantive and energetic nature of space at the fundamental most level. So, we describe the constitutive, energetic, dynamic, inherent to space, inherent to the structure of space. We refer to that as the quantum vacuum. There's quantum vacuum constitutive energy fluctuations occurring all the time. And you can actually observe and measure these directly using Casimir protocol, where essentially you get two non-conductive surfaces. These are usually like small nano devices. And if you place them at sub-micrometer distances from each other, leaving a small gap in between, they'll actually cancel out some of those wavelengths of the quantum vacuum excitations in between the two surfaces, in between the two plates in that gap space. When they cancel out some of the longer wavelengths of the vacuum fluctuations because it has a range of modes that's different size fluctuations or wavelengths of these energetic excitations. You'll actually generate an attractive force between the two surfaces of the two plates. And this force is a direct result of the vacuum energy.
Hey, William, I have a question for you. Is that an attractive force, or is it a pressure differential where there's greater pressure on the outside and less in the between?
It's much more like a pressure differential. And actually, you can, it involves fluid dynamics. So you can actually see an analogy, a macroscopic classical analogy in a classical system of this phenomenon with like ships, or even if you make two little toy ships and put them in a bathtub. If the water, the medium they're in, if you induce surface waves, or if indeed they're in the ocean and there's surface waves, and they get close enough, they'll actually, the two boats will cancel out certain wavelengths, you know, like constructive interference. So you'll have larger wavelengths on the outside of the boats.
So greater pressure.
Hitting energy and like a pressure, and the boats will actually gravitate together. And you can set this up and do it like in a bathtub. You know, it's like put even just simply like two wooden blocks kind of close together, get some energy going, some wave action on the water, and they'll gravitate together.
So then this Casimir experiment is demonstrating that there is like a fluid medium in the down at that sub what did you say, micron scale?
Yeah, exactly though. Yeah, a fluid a fluid property of space, and it actually is occurring across a range of scales. So from the Planck scale up to the like getting into the atomic scale, you have this wave-like property of space. And so once you start to get to like the sub-micron level, you actually start to block certain wavelengths that are present, and you get that attractive force.
Cool. Okay.
Now, it isn't necessarily always attractive, because interestingly, if you have two round objects, or even a flat surface like a plate and a sphere, and these need to be non-conductive materials, just so that it's not actually like an electrostatic action that's dominating the force interactions. But in those kind of case scenarios, you can get a repulsive force, which is essentially like akin to levitation. I mean, it's a gravitational, anti-gravitational effect, because you could negate the force of gravity using this repulsive Casimir force. So yeah, it's you know, very, very interesting. Now, and you're creating a force from the vacuum, so already it's starting to show that perhaps you could tap the energy that's there using this kind of methodology. And this previously had not been done before, but a research team recently has demonstrated an effective means to actually tap that energy for unidirectional energy transfer. So they're setting up a Casimir effect, and instead of just generating like a repulsive or attractive force, they're actually tapping that energy, creating the energy differential, and generating like a diode-like device that has a one-way transfer of energy. So, you know, it has almost no resistance transferring energy in one direction and then high resistance the other way, so you can get unidirectional energy transfer. There's also the dynamical Casimir effect, where you can vary the wavelength interaction in space, but you can also do it in time by oscillating the surfaces that you're using. And like that has been used to actually pull photons from the vacuum plasma. And they use a form of that. They use these oscillating optomechanical cantilevers to actually tap and direct energy from the vacuum. So it's kind of a milestone. I mean, we're talking about nano devices right now, but they're tapping the vacuum energy and using it. You know, so and you know, big things start out small. You know, so,
Indeed, like the whole universe.
That's a free energy device already.
Yeah.
That's a free energy device. So now they cannot say that it's not possible.
Exactly.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
And there's
demonstrating
also the
principle.
Casimir torque. I remember. I think there, yeah. So
torque.
you have Casimir torque. So then it takes advantage of the anisotropy of the materials. So the polarization of light. So that would couple to the electromagnetic fluctuations of the vacuum, and then you would have some kind of twisting. Not only they can separate or come together, but they can also, you know, twist around. Yeah. So that's a Casimir torque. Yeah, that was a. I was wondering if that was used in this that you did this article that you wrote with him.
You know, I'm gonna need to update the article to include that, because I'm just now remembering when you were discussing that a while back. So that's an important one to include, because I mean, if you can generate torque, you know, that's kind of important. I mean, like engines, you know,
more functional
you
as
know,
well.
especially because spin, in one of these recent research that we were reading, their spin is preserving an angular momentum, is preserving entanglement. So very probably the torque aspect, the torsional aspect of it, the twisting aspect of it, it's like the spin, it's preserving. It's one of the most important features, even for when you have spin electronics devices. How do you make a current that it's just on the regime of the quantum regime? How do you make it microscopically without resistance, like no decaying of this current? You would have to include spin in. So apparently spin preserves the ballistic regime. So it's related also with the preservation of entanglement. So yeah, it's very, very interesting effect.
Great. So William, so this functional Casimir effect, it's functional because this is the one where it's actually unidirectional transfer of energy, and so that becomes useful for application.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, many electronic devices, for instance, use diodes. You know, as part of their electronic components, and you know, those are useful electronic components because they have that very specific unidirectional transfer of electrical current of energy. You know, so now normally these diodes are powered like in our electronic devices by a battery, obviously. This though opens up a whole new realm of possibility that perhaps you could start to engineer nano devices, like extremely small devices, and their energy source is the quantum vacuum.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's
eternal energy source.
Yeah, and I mean, it's pretty futuristic. You know, it's like,
that's cool.
Yeah. And so then functional components, functional electronic components that are deriving work from the energy ever present in the space all around us.
That's very cool.
Yeah. And but then again, you know, also it's starting out small, but I mean, you know, it's like with further like engineering, optimization, and even experimentation of the system, you know, who knows, can maybe amplify the effect, get it into larger
Yeah,
type
like
systems.
heterodyne it up into
Uh-huh.
our scale of application.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Love it. Thank you for that description.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I think we're ready to go in and rock some questions. And so we'll start at the one that's been voted up, 3 votes from David Gilbert. And by the way, as I usually do, I think I have ability to bring everybody on screen. Let me get this open here. Yes, looks like I can. William, I think I need you to make me a co-host.
Oh yeah, I should have probably done that at the
No
start.
worries, all good. And I'll bring you on screen, and if you want to come on screen after I invite you to, just accept it and then turn on your camera and your microphone. And if you don't want to, or you're not in a good place for it, then just decline it and make a note in the chat. If it's not good for you to come on, that's all good too. So this first question, I'm not familiar with this work, and I wonder if either or both of you are. It's the work of Harold Hillman and Gilbert Ling. Is that something you guys are familiar with? And we could go into that question. William's nodding his head yes.
I can definitely address some
Okay, good.
aspects of this question. I've actually debated directly Tom Cohen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you mentioned that. Yeah, I remember something
yeah.
about that, right? Let me just bring on. Uh-oh, where'd it go? David, I'm going to bring you on here. While it's coming on, I'll just read this. Would you speak to their work and what's really real in living tissue? Harold Hillman's work, a serious indictment of modern cell biology and neurobiology, says how many of the biological and cellular structures science defines do not actually exist in living tissue and are artifacts created during the process used to prepare samples. He says electron microscopy involves depositing heavy metal stains on tissues fixed by chemical fixatives or deep freezing. Histology and histochemistry involve fixation, dehydration, sectioning, and staining tissues which shrink and distort them. Have technologies like light microscopy or others evolved enough where true and real structures in living tissue can be known and shown? Some of what Hillman says are artifacts include the cytoskeleton, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi body, mitochondrial cristae, and synapses. Thank you, and hello, David.
Hi there.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
Interesting question, interesting inquiry. Do you want to make a comment about it before William jumps in?
Well, first, just big appreciation for you all, because I've been listening a couple of years, and every time after these calls, I feel like my mind and being has expanded more.
Yay.
So just thank you.
You're welcome.
And only comment is just when I start to feel like I'm wrapping my head around something comes along. It's like, oh, this doesn't really exist, or So I just, So I'm appreciating any clarity and light you can shed on that.
Seems to be the state of our world right now.
Yeah. I mean, I
Every
appreciate
front.
it too.
Everything's like, no, that's not real. Wait, it is real. What is it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. And, it really is just important to always be questioning, especially, what's kind of accepted, even, within science, because science gets it wrong. It's like even, models and theories that are seemingly well established and accepted by the majority of the scientific community are wrong. And so actually I've been having a similar situation with that with some of the data coming from the James Webb Space Telescope as it regards things like the Big Bang hypothesis and the expansion of space. So I mean, just always be questioning these kind of things. In terms of the cellular and molecular biology, there's just some real fundamental errors or even incorrect statements in what are being made here. For instance, the idea that the cytoskeleton, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, or other subcellular structures are artifacts from light microscopy is completely erroneous, just in that all of those structures can be isolated. They can be extracted from the cell and studied independent of the cellular system. And indeed, all of those structures that I named since the 1970s have been routinely isolated and studied on their own. The cytoskeleton, microtubules, you can synthesize tubulin protein completely independent of the cell, or you can extract tubulin in the cell. And so, there's a number of actually really fascinating experiments that have been done where, so this is like Anirban Bandyopadhyay at MIT, folks working with Stuart Hameroff, where they've actually extracted microtubules from the cells and done experiments with them. So like Anirban Bandyopadhyay, for example, extracted a microtubule from a single brain cell, put it between two gold electrodes and passed current through it. And he was able to measure the conductance along that microtubule. Now, if this was an artifact, if this didn't exist, it would raise a question, what is he extracting? What is he moving around and measuring and conducting current along, if it doesn't exist? I mean, it's really, there's absolutely no question whatsoever about whether or not these things exist.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of fascinating that these I guess the researchers can be, I guess, just oblivious to, I mean, the concrete fact of the existence of these things.
I guess my question would be what's the process that they're extracting the microtubule, and like, where's the source of the,
So
structure?
For microtubules, they're actually highly amenable to extracting, concentrating, and isolating them, because by their nature, the way that they even work in the cell, they have very specific molecular moieties, that is molecules along the surface of the structure that you can very easily grab. So you can use other molecules to bind to the tubulins. And so this isn't exactly how it's done, but just as an example, so you could synthesize a molecule, put a magnetic bead on it. That molecule binds to the tubulin molecule, and then you use magnets to concentrate it and attract it. So actually magnetic beads is a really kind of a neat trick that can be used to isolate many different subcellular structures in molecular biology. Things like the mitochondria, they use centrifugation. When you have a cell collection of cells, you can lyse them, that is, break the plasma membrane. In this case, you do it fairly gently, and you just use a detergent. A detergent will insert into the phospholipid membrane and break it apart. That's like a soap. And then spin it at a very specific speed. And if you do that, you'll get fractionization. So the intact mitochondria are heavy, so they'll sink to a very specific level in the fractionate, whereas most of the other cellular milieu will be lighter, be on top. So you do centrifugation, spin, decant off that top part, and then you've got whole extracted mitochondria. Now, the second part of the question that I should address is on the imaging techniques. And indeed, light microscopy has advanced significantly, apparently, since these folks were last familiar with the methodologies being utilized, because you have live fluorescence microscopy. I use this a lot in studying the brain during some of my PhD work, unfinished PhD work. But you can pull up videos and watch mitochondria and microtubules with your own eyes. You can watch them. And actually, the mitochondria are fascinating to watch under a microscope because they're almost, they're semi-autonomous living entities. So within the cell, they have this extremely dynamic behavior. And so actually, many researchers have begun calling it like social mitochondria because you can see them in the cell using live fluorescence microscopy, come up to each other, interact, change their behavior and properties, and go and so it's pretty fascinating to watch. And that method just involves, again, many subcellular structures have specific surface molecules that you can attach to. And so there's a whole range of fluorescent molecules that will emit light at very specific wavelengths. And you attach them to the surface of the mitochondria, surface of any subcellular structure you want to look at, and they will fluoresce, and you can see them very clearly under the microscope. And so like histochemistry, histological sorting, even cell-specific sorting, that's all done with live cells nowadays.
Right.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah.
The biological system is still intact.
Yeah.
We're still here. All right.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, David. Good
Thanks
to see
a
you.
lot. Take
All
care.
right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
There's this question by Luke
Mhm.
Archambault.
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce his name, his second name. Archambault.
Archambault. We'll
Archambault.
have him say it. We'll bring him on.
I guess that's French, the second name.
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe I can address the first part of that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to read it?
Yeah. So Luke is asking, what can we consider the sun or any star as a singularity of its system? If so, is the size of the system proportional to the size of its center star? And what parallels can we make between the sun and our physical point of singularity, the sinoatrial node? Hey, Luke, you're muted.
Apparently this was answered on May 29th when I asked for it, but I had to leave. So I never got the answer and never went back. So it wasn't my list of questions, but if you want to answer it again,
Oh,
be my
well,
guest.
I thought that sounded familiar.
I didn't read the, okay.
What is the,
Okay.
first of all, how do you say your last name? So we got it right.
Archambault. Archambault.
Archambault.
Archambault.
There's an O at the end. A-U-L-T is O.
Yeah.
French.
And for those of us who are not as informed as maybe the three of you others on this, I don't know what the sinoatrial node is. What is that?
It's the point, it's the sort of pacemaker. William could expand on that. It's like the cell in the heart that activates the pulse of the heart. It's unpolarized, or it switches from positive to negative. And whereas I think all other cells in the body have always the same polarity, I think this one, correct me if I'm far off branch, but my understanding was it's like, when I heard doesn't have a constant polarity, that's when I wondered if it was the correspondence of singularity on the physical level. I raised that question a couple of years ago, I think, and
Mhm.
I think William said yes. I was right, because I've been telling people that.
Okay,
So you have the sun or a star, that's is it the singularity of their own system? I always see like the double torus with the singularity in the middle. And when you look at the galaxy, well, you see the star in the middle, and there, my question is from that.
yeah, the answer would be yes. It is related, of course, and there's and precisely what the next paper that's coming out soon will explain is exactly how this relationship happens between the center of the galaxy, let's say or in the solar system, that would be the sun effectively. So then so these are happening at fractional relationships. These are fractal relationships between them. And what's been in relation is the radius. The radius are in fractal relationship with each other. Okay, so yeah, so definitely the size of the star and the size of the system are correlated. Yeah, totally. And so that was the first part of the question, if I recall. So yeah, it is proportional, and the sun could be considered the singularity of the system. Yeah, and yeah, so that would be like the first part of the question, and I think that William can address the atrium.
Okay. On this, so it does, it fits the model.
Yeah.
I always thought of singularity as being like total stillness, and then the sun is our star is like extremely dynamic. So,
it's like it's like when you have a hurricane, in the hurricane, if you are inside the hurricane, like in the center of rotation, you won't feel it's stillness. It's the point of stillness. The dynamics is around the singularity. So this dynamics, this turbulence is coming from the singularity, but it's like a combination of forces, of dynamics of movements that are happening, and that create and that have this non-disturbed space in between. It's just the result of the dynamics of the system. Yeah, so you get to have this like unperturbed region of space, which is in correlation, direct correlation with the whole dynamics of the system. So that's the dynamics of the singularity. Yeah.
So there would be stillness at the inside the sun or the star in that case?
In the point of singularity, yeah. I mean, that's what I would guess. Yeah.
And at the center of also all of the planets in the same system.
Right.
So this,
every
one of those has the singularity. It's the sun, the solar center of the system is that which is cohering and creating the resonances of the orbitals and all that.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how literal can we take that, because of course if you go further, then you can always amplify. So you have the dynamics, like the stillness is got a fractal relationship also as well with respect. If you consider that the singularity in the Planck is that boundary condition that we call the Planck, or in fact, if you want to have a black hole on the Planck scale, it's two sizes, it's 2 times the radius of the Planck. And so inside that you would have also scaling law inside, so you have the subplanck, which is another scalar relationship inside. So also this singularities is in scalar proportions.
Okay.
That into the outside. So that's why I don't know if that, when we mean singularity, we don't, maybe the stillness is something that, I don't know how literal can we take that stillness as being completely still, more than referring to as a boundary condition in where you have stability. There's a boundary condition in which you have stability, and that's the boundary condition that defines all the physical systems. So yeah, maybe that's a good question. I would ask Nassim, how does he perceive this stillness? But because of course it's really clear when you are inside of a tornado, okay? Mm-hmm. we have the other part of the tornado missing, you know, it's a those dynamics, and so where's the other? So you would have to take into account all of that, and so I wouldn't really know exactly how steady that would be. No, it's steady. It's a steady state condition. That's for sure. But how non-perturbed that would be, I don't know.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
if we look at the model of our sun, the sun seems to have like multiple black holes in it, like all the big spots, the solar spots,
Yes.
are all different black holes on the same unit that the sun is, right?
Yeah, this could be like the tornadoes I was talking about. These are the vortices. Okay, so these singularities got all these dynamics around, which are this in all dimensions, in all directions, I would say. So these vortices are those precisely those dynamics. So that's a huge amount of movement, of course, no? Like the tornado. These are those like the eddy currents of the tornadoes of the sun. Okay, but at some point, yeah. So I don't know how still. Where those the stillness points? I mean, you know. Where exactly is the stillness point located, and how would I see to that? I'm not sure.
We'll have to go see by ourselves.
Yeah.
And
Go into the
Lie in there.
yeah.
And in terms of the biology on where the singularity point would be, it's actually not a singular point when it comes to the human body. So, you know, it couldn't be specified just as like the sinoatrial node, for example. So like you can see this occurring even during the process of embryological development. So, you know, we start off roughly as a sphere, as a single cell. Now that probably you could identify a singularity within it in that state. And then that would be highly analogous to like our solar system with the sun and the heliospheres, a roughly spherical double torus type geometry, and the sun is as the singularity point in the center. But what happens with us is that undergoes a process of elongation. And quite literally, we get stretched out into a tube very early in embryological development. One of the first things to form is the spinal column. One of the consequences of that is that singularity point gets distributed at points along the body. Now, this has been called by various names, but one in particular is chakras. So, you know, you have singularity points like at the third eye location, or the pineal gland, the sinoatrial node, the heart, the hypogastric plexus, and the lower portion of the spinal column. And I think Nassim has even likened it to just that you're developing in a gravitational field. So you're between two singularities even now, the singularity in the sun and the singularity in the earth. So you're kind of in between these. So you kind of get stretched out a little bit in the gravitational field.
Okay, and that rings a bell too, because when you see pictures of people who see auras, they see all these eddies, like from each chakra, the spinning, which is like a black hole again. It's like black holes.
And I think part of the process of working with those energetic centers, those chakras, is like via meditation type practices, yoga, mindfulness practices. You can actually get your state into kind of like a Bose-Einstein condensate, where those separate centers merge into one. And that is, I believe, concurrent with an experience of enlightenment, nirvana.
Say that again. Where what comes into one, like the different vortexes?
Yeah. So like you can think of it under normal conditions, they have like different frequencies, different spin rates. There's probably through like meditation type practices, You can get them at very specific harmonic ratios to each other so that you have resonance. And resonance is all about integration between systems. So you get integration, and on like a quantum physics level, it's forming like a Bose-Einstein condensate. So a Bose-Einstein condensate is where you have several seemingly independent particles. You get them in this resonant interaction. They form this resonance coupling, and all of a sudden they congeal into a single entity, a single particle, and the individualness is lost, at least as long as the Bose-Einstein condensate is present. And so like those two mechanisms, I think you can do that within yourself via like meditation type practices, yoga, mindfulness. There's probably a number of different ways to induce that state. But it's going more back into that intrinsic, that fundamental state of a singularity, singularity. So, and then I believe that's probably concurrent with a experience of enlightenment, at least highly enhanced awareness, let's say.
So to say it's as an analogy, taking like a chord on a guitar with all different notes, well attuned will make one single note.
Precisely. Yeah.
That would be for Marshall.
Precisely.
Thank you. Okay, that explains a lot.
Great. And another question Luke posted is, can you describe how the art crystal extracts photons from the field?
So one of the more interesting dynamics that we believe is occurring is extraction of phonons. Phonons. So the quantum vacuum has these energetic excitations that we can observe as photons, phonons, or more kind of conventional particles like electrons, leptons, hadrons, these kind of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, what's a phonon?
So a phonon is a quantized acoustic vibration.
Okay.
Yeah. So in
sound.
Yeah, light and sound, right? So in classical mechanics, acoustic vibrations, acoustic waves are on a continuum. When we go into the quantum regime, they become quantized. And so just like in a classical application, light is on a continuum and can have a wavelength across different continuous sizes. But in quantum mechanics, it becomes quantized and you get a photon, which is like a wave packet.
Mm-hmm.
A phonon is a sound packet. And it becomes really important in understanding the behavior of crystals or crystalline media in general. So, I mean, the Planck plasma, the vacuum structure being a crystal itself, phonon properties are very important in the biological system, where you have liquid crystals and paracrystalline systems and outright crystalline systems. Phonons are highly important as well. But what is almost more important in the coupling of the arc crystal with the vacuum energy is this constant flux of phonons.
Okay, so it was phonons, because I was referring to that experience we did a few years ago in that super dark lab, and you watched, and I thought at the time it was photons that were.
Well, here's the thing though, because the arc crystal is piezoelectric, mm-hmm. So it has an electromechanical axis. If you have a constitutive flux of phonons into that electromechanical axis, it's constantly activating it and causing it to oscillate.
When you say flux, sorry, I need to understand as you go along. When you say a constant flux of phonons, is it because we emit sound around
Well, it has to.
crystal?
No, it has to do with the coupling process. The way, the methodology under which the arc crystals are coupled to very specific vibratory frequencies of the Planck energetic oscillation of space. You know, so these energetic oscillations of space can have highly coherent regimes, highly coherent phases, and you can couple to those via resonance. So matching, like frequency matching. So obviously at the Planck scale, you have this very high frequency because at that scale, the frequency, the energy is so great that these harmonic oscillators have essentially the maximum amount of energy allowed in a given volume of space. They're black holes. And now, but you can get harmonic scaling. So if you can get at a harmonic, again, it goes back to like that guitar analogy that if you pluck the note, the strings with the right notes, they harmonize, they resonate together. And that's very similar to the modulation process that's done with the arc crystal. And in fact, if you were to see the harmonic flux resonator, so that's the electromagnetic resonance generator that's generating the frequency. It's an electromagnetic frequency of polarizable spin. Polarized spin, so an angular frequency, if you will. If you looked at the control panel for the harmonic flux resonator, it's a keyboard with notes. And so when they program the harmonic flux resonator, they insert chords and notes, and you know, they can go across octaves. And I think that they use what is it called, the chromodynamic scale? Is that right?
The chromatic scale.
Chromatic scale. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
But so they select chords. The engineers, Maxime, the physicists, and they have it through the mathematics very specifically identified what different harmonics, what different chords are going to couple potentially most strongly with modes, vacuum modes, coherent oscillatory frequencies of the vacuum structure. So it's all sound. And so a lot of what you're doing is tuning the crystal, like tuning a guitar string. And that is what we believe is very much enabling the resonant coupling for this energy transfer. And then when you get phonons exciting the crystalline lattice of the arc crystal, they're exciting that electromechanical axis, you get the piezoelectric activity. Variations in that are going to emit photons. And you know, we believe that we have observed on occasions very low level photon emission from the arc crystals. Now, some of our other physicists they're not so sure how significant the photon emission actually is, because I mean, it's very low level, and depending on experimental conditions, it'll be just above the level threshold of significance, where it's like, yes, there are photons there, but it's so marginal that you know, it's difficult. You know, and basically what we've taken that to mean is just that we need some more optimization process. And you know, if we wanted to engineer them to specifically increase photon emission, that could be done. It's not necessarily the best use for them, though. You know, so but because of the interrelationship between phonons and photons in the crystal, the arc crystal, you do have that relationship there.
Okay, so what comes out of the arc then?
Well, so getting that excitation of the crystalline lattice, so causing the crystalline lattice to oscillate at very highly
In the
specific.
HFR, yeah.
Well, and then so in the HFR, and you're coupling that to the energetic vacuum oscillations, and that is acting as a pumping mechanism, a driving mechanism, and it's providing it's a small amount of energy, but a non-zero value of energy going into the crystal and causing constitutive continuous oscillation of the crystalline lattice. So that, for instance, will generate a constitutive electromagnetic field of the arc crystals. And we believe that much of the interaction they have is via this coherent electromagnetic field that is structured around the arc crystals because of this energetic coupling. And so, anytime you were to excite a quartz crystal, you would have this effect. But because of damping, the oscillator would eventually lose energy to photon emission, phonon emission, and the oscillation would be lost. The difference with the arc crystal is that coupling with the vacuum structure, we believe, is providing a driving mechanism to sustain the system. And this has very strong analogies to time crystals, because time crystals are not supposed to exist and be possible in physics because they kind of flirt pretty strongly with perpetual motion devices. I mean, the way you have a time crystal is if you have a gas of atoms, for example, and you start them spinning around and they just keep spinning and they don't stop. And there's no damping, and there's no losses to friction, photon emissions. I mean, that's kind of like perpetual motion. And it leaves you like, well, that would be a violation of physics, but it's not, because what you're doing to prepare that system and create the time crystals, you're coupling it to the vacuum oscillations. And so the vacuum is providing a constant flux of phonons into the system, and you have a time crystal.
Okay.
And so it's analogous to that.
Yeah. Okay. Because it's anyway, I lost it. But I've been using, and please correct me, because I try to simplify things when I describe how the arc works. And I see that the way it was built with perfect proportions makes it able to resonate with the vacuum. And I use the image as the HFR, the harmonic flux resonator, as when you pull a string on a, what do you call it?
A top. Yeah.
And then it goes on forever. Is that a bad analogy? Because it's not really making it spin. You just expose it to the field. You excite it, as you say, so it's not like a rotation in the field of the arc.
It is a rotation.
The arc or the HFR? The arc?
Both.
Yeah, the HFR is like spinning,
both, you're saying.
Spinning the top, and then it goes on forever. Is that the wrong analogy or too simplistic? Or should I change model?
I mean, as an analogy, it works, but just bearing in mind that only as an analogy, just because there are some differences. But I think it works well as an analogy. The main difference is just that that top that you get spinning is undergoing frictional forces. So ostensibly it's spinning on a tabletop or on the floor. And so there's friction where those two surfaces meet. And so you have energy lost. And so eventually, your top stops spinning and falls over. But, right now, in its current iteration, you do have some energy losses even in the HFR, which is why it's not yet a over unity energy device. So actually, maybe the analogy is spot on. Yeah, I think it works fairly well. Yeah, yeah.
Great.
Thank you very
Awesome.
much.
We'll leave it there. Thank you, Luke. Yeah, that was a very stimulating conversation. Great. Good to see you.
Yes.
Bye. All right. Let's see that one. Great. Yeah, that was very insightful. That whole aspect about phonons was somewhat new to me as well, to really understand that in more depth about how that's integral to the way those dynamics are occurring.
And you know, it ties in very closely with your description of the sonoluminescent field. You know, it's just that you know, you do have a quantized description of sound that makes up the field, and it's these phonon oscillations. So yeah, I could see it having some really direct application to your research.
Yeah, that's what I was really getting. It's just absolutely right down at that most basic fundamental level, the coexistence of the sono and the luminescent.
Yeah. Well, it really is. I mean, it's an interplay of light and sound and geometry,
converting one to the other, and you know, totally interplay.
And you know, it fascinates me just because I think that is how the biology is working. It's almost like the same, similar dynamic.
It would be.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, if what we're saying is true,
it should be.
You know that it made me think that when Nassim is describing this behavior of the crystal, there's this crystalline lattice which is behaving then as a Bose-Einstein condensate, where you have no distinguishability between particles. So I'm thinking that the interaction, depending on the level of interaction, you're reaching deeper into this structure of the vacuum. And if you go deep enough, then you would tap into the bosonic part. And the bosonic part is the part in which light is happening, because photons are bosonic particles as well. So it seems to me that it's just it's a matter of regime on what are you tapping into. So if you go a little bit further, then, because you know sound waves have to propagate on it's a mechanical propagation, so there's supposed to be, like, you know, matter. But what we call matter is in reality this distinguishability of particles. So then in that part of the distinguishable part, in which particles start to emerge as distinguishable, then that's when sound starts to play like a role. So it seems to me that it depends on how deep you go into the lattice, into the quantum field, then you will tap into the photonic part, which is the bosonic part, or to the phononic part, which is the part of the Fermi distribution, the fermionic part. And it seemed to me that this was really nice to see it that way.
That makes sense, because if you're in that bosonic regime, it's not really comprised of individual parts that can oscillate independently, right? Which would kind of be needed for sound transfer. It's really like a singular entity, you know. So that makes sense to me, that it'd be more in like the Fermi Bose state, or even the fermion state, that you start to get more of the phonon type interaction, the sound becoming important. That's an interesting thought.
Interesting, yeah. So there's a question from Im.
Okay, I'll bring up Im.
Yeah.
All right, you want to go read the question?
Yeah, so the question reads, is there any recent encouraging advancement in unified-based space travel, propulsion systems, and the like? Hi, so we have heard that work in NASA about the propellant. Wait, I lost the question. What happened? Okay, okay. Discernible thrust via gradient-focused cone propellant. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nassim was talking about that a while back, and I'm going, well, anything recently? I mean, I'm impatient.
Yeah.
I'm listening to way too much sci-fi these days. I'm listening to you guys. I want it to happen now, preferably before I'm gone.
Yes. We want to have it now. All of us. We want to have it now, and it will happen so soon. I mean, of course, if the unified base, okay, in theory, there's nothing more advanced than what we have been doing. I mean, the research that Nassim is preparing and it's about to publish, that it's like in the theoretical part of what we're talking, that's the most developed thing. Now, of course, that would explain what you mentioned, the impossible drive, which is what you mentioned here, the via gradient, because you know the via gradient has no explanation. That's why it's called impossible drive. So they were saying it was impossible. There must be some problem. We probably the experiment is not working well. There's something that we're not doing properly because this is impossible. So that was like the kind of arguments that were being given, but at the end that was given trust. And so if that was the case, then what is it pushing against? So that would mean that they would have to admit that there's this density gradient going on, and if you have this density gradient, they would immediately understand that that's the vacuum catastrophe. That's the same problem that the vacuum catastrophe is having, with respect of not acknowledging that there's a density gradient between scales. That's all there is. So this is why there seems to be 122 orders of magnitude difference between the vacuum at the quantum scale and the energy density, say, of the vacuum at the cosmological scale. There's no discontinuity. It's just that there's a density gradient. So if you know how to tap into this density gradient, then you can push against the vacuum, or more than push against it, it is the vacuum which is propulsing you. So it's like so that's the mechanism behind. It's like you have to create. So if you manage to create technology that is able to couple by creating this density gradient, by mimicking, let's say, this density, then you will couple to the vacuum through this density gradient.
And it
But
seems to, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But now that you're mentioning most advanced technologies, I would say that what we were just today sharing things that William had was discussing about what was that fusion technology. So I don't know if you've heard of that news, very recent news, that they were almost about to get into fusion regime.
That's been elusive for decades. Whoa.
Yeah,
that's big.
That's big because without any that would be like having that would be like the dream for energy, devices. So energy extraction. So that's just very recent, and I was very curious about something that just some hours ago William was sharing in the team, which was this what was the name of it? What was it?
LPP fusion.
LPP fusion. LPP fusion, exactly. With plasmoids, which are basically like toruses. I don't know if that animation is reflecting exactly what they see in the experiments, or it's just the animation, but it's incredible because it's kind of a coiling it's like it's a field, an electromagnetic field, that it's curving on its own. It's curving into itself. It's curving so much that it becomes a torus. Okay. And so it becomes self-sustainable, I guess, and then it amplifies and it reaches temperatures of I don't know, it was full
270 kiloelectron volts. And I mean, they were saying that like in the sun, it's like 1 kiloelectron volt. So more energy than what is achieved in the sun.
That sounds kind of dangerous. Well,
Yeah. Well, maybe.
dangerous thing. But that seems like you're way over unity. You're going 1,000 percentiles of over unity, creating torque.
Yeah.
And Coriolis torque, all of this that you need to generate your gravity, right? Or to bend your space-time, or to take energy out of the vacuum. It's funny. It's funny because we're all doing this all the time. All of us. Any biology that's ever lived is pulling energy out of the vacuum in order for a heart to beat 100,000 times a day, right? I mean, it can't do that mechanically. And we've been doing it. We're conferred this by the divine. Whoever's got the blueprint confers upon us the ability to pull energy out of the vacuum. And all we got to do is figure out how we do that. All of us, everything does that. Yeah. And we do it at this kind of scale with the space travel. And finally, we can escape this crazy stuff. Well, not to escape, but to become finally our highest expression, because we're meant for the stars. We have the ability to think like that. We have the ability to create out of nothing amazing things like what you're doing right here. This is why we all tune in. We just want to hear the magic going on every time. And the people I talk to in the breakout rooms, they're doing the same thing you guys are doing. They're doing it in their way. And everybody's got this genius going on. And this is the collection of this genius. Well, we got this ability. Why not, put it to use like this? And the big question I've got, and I'll get off, the big question I've got is, when is the physics cartel, or whatever you want to call them, when are they going to finally break down? There is so much evidence going on. Hundreds of scientists are completely duplicating what you guys are doing all the time, all around the world. I mean, the cat is totally out of the bag by now.
We're hot on their heels.
Yeah, you've surpassed them. This is the embarrassment. Everybody wants to be on the mountaintop, but doesn't want to come down. The thing is, you've changed co-data values. You're doing things that are surpassing anything that they've been doing, and they want to say that Nassim is whatever he is, something negative, or whatever you're doing is not right, and all that. And this is all of politics. Has always been this. But at the same time, if they just kind of integrate some of the stuff with what they've already got and what you guys got, and how scientists tend not to talk to each other. Maybe before Nassim, it was more like that than it is now. But everybody's got so many little secrets in their little corners all over the world. If they just would talk to each other without trying to protect patents and all this other stuff, and their name, and keep their textbooks and all of that.
That's why it's amazing. If someone's following the Unified Science course that we give for free, all is there. All the information is there. Of course, what's coming now, it's much more, but it will be part of Module 8. So it will be all given for free. There won't be no secrets. Of course, there's patents that are being done because, of course, there are applications. That's things that Nassim wants to patent. But the physics behind the mechanisms, those are free. Those are given for free. And so there won't be any excuse at the end, And we're not so worried about. I won't be any more worried about the cartels, the physics cartels, because I don't know if it's an emotional blockage. I don't know if it's intellectual, and it couldn't be intellectual because it's this theory. It's extremely reasonable, logical, simple. So it cannot be something intellectual. It's got to be something like psychological, emotional. I don't know what is blocking the message.
it's a
came out
whole-
and it didn't. So,
It's-
so but I do believe that the problem is in physicists, what I feel is that, and it happened with my own experience. Okay, let's say I find this paper from the structural proton and I just fall off my feet. I say, this is incredible. How can you reach the size? How can you have the correct value for the radius of the proton, the structure, with just algebra, just, denominators, just fractions? This is just impossible. But it's giving, you just have to sit down, do the calculations, and you say, yeah, this is given the correct, and then you see that the meaning of the model, there's meaning behind, there's a logic behind, there's a meaning behind. So I just thought this will be so easy for people to grasp. So I just came with my paper to my physicist colleagues and I said, look at that. The first thing that happened was, who's this guy? Where is this being published? And there's filters, up to the point that they didn't read the paper.
Yeah, yes.
No? So I was like, Jesus, and this is a friendship relationship. I'm telling you, please read this paper. I mean, as a friend, and it was just, oh, this is a coincidence. This is numerology. This is what, blah, 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 blah. So I said, okay, and this happened not once, not twice, many times. And so I said, there's something energetically going on. And now my conclusion was that we are being, and Nassim's work is being, let's say, encapsulated so that he develops it as much as he can before this makes it mainstream. I do believe this is not a bad thing. It's been, on the contrary, this screening happening. This theory is called the screening theory. I mean, we call it the scaling law theory, but in reality, it is a screening theory. The theory of how the screening happens through scales. So it's a screen. So it makes perfect sense that the theory of itself is protecting itself through the screening so that it doesn't reach out to all mainstream physicists until it's not ready to go out, So I do believe that this is, on the contrary, it's a huge blessing for Nassim that he's got. Of course, it's been painful. Of course, it's been whatever, but for all of us included, but it's like, but mainly for him, but it's been like a shield. It's being screened.
Yes.
And I tried to, pierce the screening and go, and it was just not possible. It's something energetically going on other levels. It's not from this dimension, I would say, not from this. It is not from here. So
I think it also had to
there's no
really.
explanation for that. There's no explanation. Honestly, there's no explanation. So not from this realm, exactly. This is not, so it's not, and so I'm sure that, of course, they're going to have a very rough time when they find out, because they will find out the holographic solution on their own. Eric Berlin is very close to it, and they will have a very rough time when they want to define a particle for space and say, oops.
It's been done already.
This is done already. Oh, the holographic ratio, oops.
Oh,
this is done already.
All right. Oh, that was done like 5-6 years ago. Oops.
Rocketry doesn't work, folks. Yeah, I mean, you can get to Mars, so what? Even if you get there, so what?
No.
It looks like I'm in Ladakh. It looks exactly like Mars here. So what?
No,
But the thing is, what I also see is there's something fundamental about the human makeup, maybe energetically, like you're saying, Ines, is that I'm begging people to take the course. Will you please just take a look? And they always sidetrack and say, "Oh no, I checked in on one of your sessions there, and he's trying to be Mr. Hollywood, and he says, no, he doesn't understand." I'm like, look, this is part of the game. You have to be out there for the public.
That's why
Everybody comes
it's
to
called
their
resonance foundation. This is why it's called like that. Either you resonance or you don't. It's binary.
Yes.
It's one,
Yes, right.
you're out, one or zero. It's just like that. It is like that.
everything
And I
comes to
believe-
its own realization in its own timing, including everybody, everything and everybody comes to its own realization in its own time. And we can offer and invite, and that's a really beautiful thing to do. And then with everything, then we have to let that go completely without any expectation.
I agree with that. There's also the kind of fact it's a loose fact. Over the course of history, it's always been like G. Edward Griffin says, the 2 to 3% are the ones who always do all the work, and the rest 97 are just sitting back waiting to see what the outcome is, so they know which way to go. And I think that there's a lot of that going on as well here. So they don't want to get in and see the change because they're afraid of the change. So yeah, it's always going to be just the people, the fringe people, maybe. I don't know. It's not like we have to introduce ourselves as something special. It's just that, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we can feel, and you know, when we come into these sessions together, we're really talking about evoking, articulating, and we can really feel that we are right on the cusp of that full-on paradigm shift. That we, you know, because we're intimately in conversation about what this is, to the degree where, yes, we can all agree this makes sense. As Ines was saying, it's not complex. It's really a very simple model, and therefore we can say, okay, yeah, we all see the same thing, and then we can look at all these things from different, you know, different angles to look into the same picture, and that is that coherence and that morphogenic field getting established is ripe and ready, you know, and it's so ripe and ready. And a lot of what is causing people to not see it has to reach its end game state to where it no longer can be sustained because it just doesn't make sense, and or the obvious flaws or the outright lies are
to avoid it, you mean?
Yeah, to avoid it. Yeah. So and it's also a distraction. It's a mind game distraction, and there's a lot of fear in that paradigm of its own existence, which it, you know, they just as they can feel the cusp and the shift, for them it's like, we're you know, it's all going to fall apart, and we're like, yeah, cool.
Into the unknown.
And dive into the unknown, and so what we know and feel is that we are literally right on the threshold of that, and I think we're all confident that this next paper is going to be where, you know, the full expression and the full expansion of that occurs in the world.
When
no answers given at this time, but I have no idea.
Before the end of the year.
There's also there's cracks in the monolith that are forming. I mean, after 30 years of no results, most physicists are giving up on like dark matter. And there's a serious push towards, okay, let's look at these alternative theories, variable speed of light, all kinds of things that before were nearly heretical. But it's like, well, you know, it's not dark matter. I mean, 30 years of lots of money and lots of work and lots of experimentation, and there's not a shred of evidence, a single observation to support this dark matter hypothesis. The large particle colliders, the complete absence of any observation of supersymmetric particles, any kind of empirical support whatsoever for string theory. You know, so it's like, you know, the folks who are still pushing those ideas will probably try to ride the car until the wheels fall off. Hopefully it doesn't mean spending another $10 billion on a mega super large collider. But it's just that eventually the let's say truth wins out. There's no observational evidence in support of some of these things. We need to look at other theories. This monolith of scientific consensus needs to break down, and we need to be free to start to look and explore ideas creatively and freely, which is not currently the case.
And again, it's really that, you know, just like you just described, William, those cracks are appearing, and there are those within that academic paradigm that are willing to, like, okay, we got to look somewhere else because this is just falling apart. And there are those who are so entrenched in it that they're probably getting pretty terrified that, you know, after 30 years and billions of dollars, they've got nothing. And, you know, and all the papers they wrote are pretty meaningless, and then their career becomes irrelevant. That's terrifying, and understandably
you know,
so.
The astronomers just published a paper. The opening word was panic, exclamation mark. Because the data coming from the James Webb Space Telescope is not in agreement with the standard cosmological model. The lambda cold dark model is directly contradicted by what we're seeing with our eyes now. And so they're publishing papers saying panic.
Just like when the proton problem we had.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
The crisis, the proton radius crisis. Yeah.
Now it's a cosmos crisis. So,
but the good news is that all the work that you guys are doing and the Sims were doing and the papers and everything, like there's such an established foundation for when that tipping point comes, which as I said, I think it's very, very close. And I think the next paper is going to be where it just is like, okay, they can't stop that anymore. And there's going to be just a wave of activity and interest. And I think, Ines, I think what you said is really right on, that there's a screening factor that only allowed those who are ready to come in and help build that field up to do so to this point, so that it wasn't just completely overwhelmed too soon.
yeah.
And, like we're all like, can it be last year that this happened? That would be great. But at the same time, that's, again, it's about, Bucky Fuller had this beautiful phrase. He said, the absolute timing of all realization, like I was saying before, the absolute timing of all realization cannot happen until it's time for it to happen. And, we'll do our part, we'll put our energy into it, and we'll wish, we'll be impatient, all that. And, it is only going to happen when it's time for it to happen. And again, as Ines was saying, there are dynamics, factors, influences beyond our perceptual framework that are informing that we just have to really trust it's in exactly the right time.
And I think there's a change in narrative. You could see it with the ovnis situation now. Unidentified, the UFOs, unidentified flying objects, the hearing happening in the USA, hearings about that. So they know there's already some technology which is not explained by our laws of physics. So now they have two options, or say they're man-made, in which case the huge political implications, I mean, that qualifies as almost like crime against humanity, because that means there's new laws of physics going on. So who's going to take the blame on that? Okay, let's say, oh no, they're human-made. Okay, they're human-made. So where these physics law, where are they reading? I mean, why are we teaching in school this science of the old paradigm? Where is this new science? So that's not a good news for mainstream physics. To saying, oh, they're man-made.
Exactly.
Oh, really?
Exactly.
So okay, so they're man-made. Where's that physics?
Yeah.
We're not teaching. So that's a crime against humanity if you see it deeply. Okay.
One of many.
And if not, the solution, the response would be, oh, it's extraterrestrial. Oh, don't say that. Okay, so then now it's like there's. It's a moment where the narrative is changing. You can see Mikio Kaku saying, oh, and I do believe now that that's probably extraterrestrial. Come on, 5 years ago, he was saying like crop circles were made with microwave ovens and things like that. So it's like, I mean, this is the moment. I mean, and they have to catch up really fast. The mainstream is trying to catch up really fast because they know people are awakening and now they're making a fool of themselves. So I wouldn't worry about that. I wouldn't really honestly worry about that.
Well, I think it's just a matter, in the end, it is a matter where there has to be some push, though. There's got to be a front. And you're right. I mean, Nassim has got to be protected. You all have got to be protected. I hope you go out of your offices with motorcades, but that's just my imagination.
They're there, but they're invisible.
Lasers, something, but it's because somebody needs to protect the front of the information and go forward with it and be the face. We're humans. We have to have a face. We have to have a recognition, and we have to have somebody who defines something and that goes forward. And maybe it shouldn't be like that, but it is. And it's all politics and it's all religion in a way. We follow people. We don't follow, concepts like we should. Jesus and all those. They always said, don't do don't try to be me, just you do what I do.
Again, I think
And
we're on the threshold of
it's
that.
not
shift.
that way. I'm sorry?
Again, I think we're on the threshold of that shift where that modality of perception and being and interaction that has basically dominated the worldview and the methodologies of science and even religion and medicine and all that. First of all, it's collapsing under its own weight. You can't hold up something that is actually not congruent with nature and the cosmos. It just can't. And that includes in our minds, because there's no difference between our minds and nature and the cosmos. So that which has been dominating is no longer viable, as we can see everywhere we look. And as Ines said, some of the perpetuation of that is ultimately crimes against humanity, because there are solutions that have been here a long time that we could have in place where a lot of what we're experiencing would not have to happen at all. And there's still that perpetuation. More importantly, though, there is so much already in place, across all the sectors, that is based on this harmonizing, resonating physics and the nature of consciousness itself, and the interaction of the physical and the mental experience that is getting very grounded in the world, to where when the thing shakes up enough where it's going to fall apart, what's going to be there? And this is what's really there. And then that's actually coming in everywhere around the world right now. And so then it won't be that problem anymore, is what I.
And so then maybe in another way to paraphrase you, it's something that is so big it needs to mature, it needs to bake in the oven, and it needs to mature.
Yeah, it has to become coherent. It has to become
And
coherent in the world.
I was afraid of that answer.
Well, and the thing is that it's happening very, very fast. And a lot of it's already here and coherent. And it's more just going to be a matter of adoption rather than an entire retraining from scratch to get there. And especially when we think about it in terms of like environmental ecosystems restoration with harmonic resonance-based technologies, the energy generating technologies, the energy medicine technologies, when biological systems get restored and harmonized, and that stress gets out of the system. Once the stress gets out of the biological systems, our bodies and the ecosystems and et cetera, all of it, then a lot of the disturbance that's in the field of the noosphere is removed, like the vast majority of that, the disturbance, and the stress causes the conflict, and it causes the mistrusts and all this stuff. Once we restore that integrity, then a lot of what has been kind of driving the challenges that we're so tired of, like we know we could have a great world just by hanging out together and creating awesome things, which is what we're doing. That is already just dropping into place now. And so it's the coherence, like you said, it's not like it's going to take a long time. It's actually going to be, I think, almost like that.
Well, I know that the world, the technical world, the world, the researching world, the world that's doing the work that, like what you are doing, there's plenty to go forward right now, and there has been plenty for a while to go forward. I thought we had everything we needed when I was a little kid, and I was just looking around at all of this potential that was going on. I was like, wow, why aren't we using all this stuff? But I think that unfortunately, when it goes down, it all has to go down, because one peg of that system, whatever we want to call that system, is attached to every other peg of that system, and it all has to be there. And in order for unified and these promises of the future and all these things that have been sequestered, and these great advancements and these people that have been silenced, and all of this royal that's been going on in science since the beginning of time, if it all of a sudden came to the fore, that would mean by definition, the big bad boys, whatever you want to call it, whatever we don't talk about, has to go down. All of it. And I'm an environmental engineer. For one, I am sick of being of this guilt trip that we're putting on ourselves for the environmental destruction of the planet. You know, the vast majority of that has been opportunistic. It's been commercial. It's been, and then we just follow suit because that's how things are done. And what has always led the way in the destructions of our planet, the destructions of our social systems, all of it. What has led the way in that is opportunity, you know, by big concerns. And we are not planet busters. We are not destroyers.
Not
You
by
know,
our
we are
nature.
not bad people.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
I found out in my circling the globe many times and all this and doing my work, what I found out, our problem is not that we hate, not that we're bad. You know what our problem is? We love too much. You think about that. We love too much. Every place that I've been, I thought was just such a paradise, and I was there, and you know, I was telling all my friends, "Oh, you got to come see this." You know, that destroys places. This is what we do. It's not because we hate anything, not because we're doing anything wrong. What we're not doing is sitting down and thinking things through. And we've allowed the planet to be run over from day one because we never sat down like this, and we were never a body. We were never a force. The reason why whoever it is up there doing and having so much power, and why we're not, is because they're organized. They sit down and figured it out and got think tanks and all of that. And we're not doing that. That's the only difference.
The thing is that we are, and that there are many groups now doing that. It's just that it is a bit under the radar for the sake of somewhat safety and for the sake of, you know, building that coherence to the point where then there's an established base for it to rest on when it's time to go
Okay.
there. And
Okay.
so, I mean, it absolutely is happening.
And I
in
don't-
in all sorts of ways, yeah.
I don't mean to run this topic into the ground, so I will sign off, but I just wanted to hear something's going on by starting with the space travel there,
That's great.
because I think a lot of us were looking for something, a cookie, you know.
Yeah.
We all want the confidence to know that, yeah, it indeed is going forward, and that we can be part of it. Everything that all of us are doing as well, we can tap into that. And it's user friendly. I mean, your mathematics is a lot easier than what I learned in school.
Yeah.
You know, I can understand.
We are all participating. There's no not participating in this universe. So, you know, this is how we establish that coherence, is just exactly by these kind of conversations and these discussions, and then the work and the research, and in all the ways that's happening in all the fields around the world right now. You know, I am very optimistic and very confident that even though the breakdown part is probably going to get messy for a while, that which is ready to come in and fill the voids and establish the coherent foundation for what we know is coming is, whew, it is just coming into place all over the place right now, thankfully. So we'll leave it at that for today. And I really appreciate the conversation.
Thanks so much, all three of you. Appreciate you. And I'll sign off. Thanks.
Thank you for being here. Well, that was very dynamic journey today. Going into some deep science, a little bit of a little philosophical perspective, and checking in with how we all feel like we're doing in this collective adventure. So thank you everybody for that. We're gonna wrap it up there. There's many good questions, a couple I wanted to get to, but come back next month and post those questions again, and we'll circle back around to them as best we can. So William and Ines, thank you so much again today. It's amazing to hear what you guys have to bring in, and always illuminating. And everybody here, I can speak for everybody. We learned so much from you guys and really appreciate it.
Thanks. We're happy to be here. See you next month.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
All right.
Goodbye.
No, thank you all. Looking forward to our next session coming up next month.
Have a good month, everybody. Put the word out, invite people into the academy, and have them come into these sessions. Get them to sign up as a member and come on in. All right, be well. Take good care. Bye for now.